Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about specifically about Dungeons and Dragons and evangelical Christianity and Rick and Morty, and how now, because of Rick and Morty, evangelical Christianity is part of Dungeons and Dragons canon. What? That is shocking. It's very surprising to me that this has happened. But basically, it's happened, and I want to talk about it because nobody else in the world is going to talk about this except J. Scott Garibay. Let's get into it. All right. So, how did evangelical Christianity become part of Dungeons and Dragons canon? Well, the vector was through Rick and Morty. All right. So let's connect the dots. So before the year 2020, 2019, all the way back to 1974, Dungeons and Dragons had a specific relationship to evangelical Christianity, which was tangential at best, and absolutely no reference to evangelical Christianity through Dungeons and Dragons canon. There's no connection. Okay, now how was it tangentially connected? Well, this is really interesting, but I've read a lot of books about the history of Dungeons and Dragons, and every book that talks about the history of Dungeons and Dragons talks about Gary Gygax. A lot of people don't realize this. It's not talked about in a lot of history books. In a lot of history books, it might be briefly mentioned, right? Because I think it's uncomfortable for a lot of people, right? Basically, there's strong evidence that Gary Gygax became an evangelical Christian late in his life. So he had been marginally spiritual before he was like 19, before he was like 40 years old. But in his mid 40s, he actually began a very distinct personal journey into Christianity. I've read several articles about this. I'm not convinced that Gary Gygax was an evangelical Christian. I think he may have become an evangelical Christian in his later lives. This is similar to Tolkien. Tolkien actually had a very Catholic background. There's many evangelical Christians that like to claim Tolkien as a Christian, but unless you say I'm a Christian, and then you give indications that you're an evangelical Christian, you really can't count it, right? So there is strong evidence that Gary Gygax became an evangelical Christian in his later years, like between when he was 40 and 50 years old. But I don't think it's a lock, right? We really haven't completely proven it, right? And frankly, it's not the hill I want to die on, right? Like it wasn't that important to me, because I don't need anything more to hold Gary Gygax in great esteem. He created the best art, literary, gaming vector that's ever existed. He created a new element of Americana that is equal in stature to jazz, baseball, and Coca-Cola, okay, and rap, right? Like these are American things. They were created in America. Dungeons and Dragons is an amazing piece of Americana. It's an amazing art vector. It's an amazing vector for art, literature, and for gaming. Okay. So with that said, how did evangelical Christian in the year 2020 become directly connected to Dungeons and Dragons canon? Here you go. All right. So we got to go back to 2019 first. So in 2019, Wizards of the Coast made one of the strangest Dungeons and Dragons products. I'll say without a doubt, I think the Rick and Morty Dungeons and Dragons official Dungeons and Dragons Rick and Morty starter box is the strangest product that has ever existed in Dungeons and Dragons, bar none. Okay, for some strange reason, the powers that be at Wizard. Actually, I think specifically people in Wizards of the Coast, not Hasbro, were super into Rick and Morty, and also Rick and Morty was doing Rick and Morty the show was doing some games, was creating games and merchandise, and they already had a relationship with Hasbro. Okay, so once that was connected, some people within Dungeons who worked at Wizards of the Coast and worked on Dungeons and Dragons were super Rick and Morty fans, and they said, okay, we're gonna make this Dungeons and Dragons Rick and Morty starter box. That made the world of Rick and Morty a canon setting for Dungeons and Dragons, right? So Rick Sanchez is statted out. Morty himself is statted out. Morty's sister is statted out. I think Morty's like father and mom are characters. There's a lot there. Like I was like, wow, And it's really strange. I feel like it's the product that absolutely no one in the world asked for, right? And the other thing is, it's not a small deal. Like, it's not a small, like, little asterisk that Rick and Morty is an official canon setting for Dungeons and Dragons. The reason why is Dungeons and Dragons, what you have to understand is Dungeons and Dragons is Marvel in the 1980s, right? Dungeons and Dragons has not had its multi-billion-dollar movie. Okay, it had a failed movie in the year 2000, which was quickly forgotten. But if and when Dungeons and Dragons becomes an official movie franchise, there could be billions and billions of dollars connected to Dungeons and Dragons, right? And it could really surpass Game of Thrones, or even it could surpass Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, and Lord of the Rings, all very, very quickly if it has a successful movie franchise, okay? If you think I'm kidding, like, just think about it. Iron Man launched the MCU. The MCU is the most powerful, successful movie series that has ever existed in American history, okay? So that's the key, is Dungeons and Dragons is potentially a multi-billion-dollar brand with massive merchandising credit and could be the strongest fantasy platform in existence, right? And it's got good genes for that, like a good racehorse, right? Is bred to be, a winner, right? Dungeons and Dragons is bred to be a winner. It's Americana. It's like jazz, baseball, comic books. Like, it's got a good foundation, right? Nostalgia is powerful, and Dungeons and Dragons is crazily positioned for nostalgia, right? So with all that, you could connect Dungeons and Dragons to a lot of different worlds. Why on earth they chose to connect Dungeons and Dragons to Rick and Morty is beyond me. The reason why is Rick and Morty is an incredibly risky property, okay? Because one, it's incredibly irreverent, okay? Or I thought it was. Well, we'll talk about its actual irreverence, right? So it is very, very strange just what happens within Rick and Morty and where that property goes, right? So one of the things is it's connected to Dan Harmon, okay? Now, Dan Harmon has talked publicly that he suffers from, he is a troubled creator, right? That has some serious demons, right? And the thing is, the demand for his product is so high, it outweighs his mental health state to produce the product, right? And if you listen to his podcast, he's saying he's just moving forward and creating as he can create, right? Well, one of the strangest things is when you attach your brand, Dungeons and Dragons, to a brand that has had some significant brand problems, right? All I got to do is say McDonald's and Tabletop, McDonald's and Rick and Morty Szechuan sauce. There were some serious problems with the Rick and Morty community connected to a massive American brand, right? So that was already, and that happened before the release of the product, right? So they knew being attached to Rick and Morty was going to be risky, right? But no, I don't think anyone in the world suspected where that risk would lead, right? And one of the risks that we've seen is this incredibly strange occurrence where evangelical Christianity has now become a part of Dungeons and Dragons canon. All right, so how do we get there? So here's where it happened. It happened in Rick and Morty Season 4, Episode 6. And in Episode 6, it is a story, it is a specific episode that is all about a story train. And the story train is literally a literal train going through space where Rick and Morty are actually appear on the train. And on the train, people are telling stories about Rick and Morty, Rick Sanchez specifically, right? Very, very strange episode, right? Very strange episode. So, but in this episode, what happens is Rick and Morty continue to do what they do in most shows, and that is they are interacting with instances of themselves in other pocket universes within the Rick and Morty universe, right? Well, within one of those pocket universes, in Episode 6, Rick and Morty become evangelical Christians. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Wow, right? I could not believe what I was seeing. So one, I am an evangelical Christian, okay? I'm also a Dungeons and Dragons fan, And unfortunately, I have to say, I'm a Rick and Morty fan. I didn't want to like this show, but I look forward to when it comes out. And unfortunately, I watched it like, I'll take a look at this. I've heard this discuss philosophy. But I did become a fan of the show, right? And I have to be honest about that, because it pushes my buttons in a lot of different ways. But Dan Harmon is clearly absolutely brilliant. And even though he has troubled and has many demons, and those demons are front and forward in his work, right? It's still a pretty engaging show because it discusses very deeply religion, philosophy, theology, I would say ontology. It's a deep show, right? So one of the things that blew my mind was they made this part in episode 4, in season 4, episode 6. Rick says, well, you know, we're about to die, right? And that's going to be terrible. And actually, then directly, Morty's like, oh no, we're going to die. This is terrible. And Rick says, well, you know what? It's never too late. We can still save ourselves. We can become Christians, right? And then he says, pray with me, Morty, and I'm going to tell you how to get this done. And I was shocked. They actually said, like, the sinner's prayer. He was like, dear Lord, I believe that your death on the cross helped me. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it was what you would expect. You could absolutely get saved praying the prayer that they pray in the Rick and Morty episode 4, season 4, episode 6. Now, this doesn't surprise me because if it's Dan Harmon, he did his homework, right? He talked to real evangelical Christians to get this done, right? So basically, they say the following: Jesus, we believe that you have the ability to save us, and that your death on the cross will allow us to be saved forever, even in this last moment of our lives. Okay, and please accept us. Please accept us into salvation. I was like, are you kidding me? They were actually praying this prayer in Rick and Morty? It was incredible. I couldn't believe it. So within the Rick and Morty world, there are two Rick and Mortys, two distinct Rick and Mortys who are evangelical Christians. Now, why do I say they're evangelical Christians and not just Christians or Catholic Christians or Catholics, right? Well, for one, evangelical Christians are their very own brand, right? And if you think I'm wrong about that, just listen to 5 minutes of mainstream media, and they will tell you very clearly that evangelical Christians aren't like most Christians, right? Now, why are they? Well, one, they're exclusionary. They're like, we're one path to God, right? Jesus Christ is the only path to God. We don't care if you don't like that. Tough nuggets, right? Like, basically, there's only one path to God. Not all religions are the same. Not everybody gets in. This isn't Little League. It's where everybody gets to play. If you believe what we believe about Christianity, if you believe the Bible and every single word of it, right, and then you say, and did you ask Jesus Christ for salvation, and you believe that Jesus Christ's death on the cross is sufficient to give you salvation, you will be in heaven forever. Evangelical Christianity ain't like other religions. Other religions, like our religion's important, and all other religions are important too. Evangelical Christianity ain't like that, right? It's like one path to God, Jesus Christ. That's it. You come by any other path, you ain't gonna make it, right? So that's one reason why it's evangelical. So why aren't they and that's incredibly evangelical. And the words they chose on that episode, I can tell you right now, that's an evangelical prayer, right? And the reason why is for Catholics that wouldn't be enough, okay? So for Catholics, they believe that the church is important too. And the church has to christen you, like you have to go through a Catholic baptism. And they're like, when you pass, you have to have, a special mass said for you. And Catholics believe that, they, like Rick actually said, it's never too late for us to accept salvation. That's a deeply evangelical Christian vibe, right? That is deeply evangelical Christian idea. That is not the case with Catholics. Catholics are like, oh, you better go get a priest. They got to put rights over this person who's done the right thing all their lives. And they believe your actions are actually connected to your salvation, that you have to do works, that you have to be good and interact rightly with the church. Evangelical Christians don't believe that. We believe in the thief on the cross, right? The thief on the cross. The thief on the cross said, Jesus, I recognize you. I'll see you in heaven today. He did no works. No works. That's very un-Catholic, right? So this was a representation of evangelical Christianity within Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty is a canon Dungeons & Dragons universe. that means evangelical Christianity exists within canon Dungeons & Dragons. I am incredibly shocked that this has happened, right? I haven't really fully unpacked the ramifications of this, but it is incredible, right? So, shocking to everyone, including me, the creation of the Dungeons & Dragons Rick and Morty starter box makes evangelical Christianity canon within Dungeons & Dragons. An incredible occurrence. Brought to you first by Dungeons & Dragons, by me, Scott Garibay, who enjoys commentating on Dungeons & Dragons. All that's my opinion. What do you think? Do you think I'm right? Do you think that evangelical Christianity now fully exists within Dungeons & Dragons as a canon concept because of the canon setting of Dungeons & Dragons Rick and Morty setting? I'd love to hear your opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.